Hi. You know when things all seem to be in order, you've got everything prepared, and then life throws something at you? Well, that happened this morning. I'd written myself a bit of a script for this video because, let's face it, it's really important in the uncertain times that we're in. And anyway, I was getting up, I was having a shave with my rechargeable Braun battery shaver, 35 years old, having a shave, and about halfway through the battery ran out. So this side's smooth, this is rough. And then I went to put a shirt on and I tore the sleeve. And then so I stepped back and thought, oh, okay, hang on, there's a lesson here. So I've abandoned the script, albeit I've got a piece of paper there with some notes on because I want to make sure I cover everything. I am making no effort to make this slick, professional. There will be ums and ahs, there will be probably cuts in the middle. Doesn't matter, because the message I want to get across is really, really important. The delivery isn't. So apologies if it's a bit unslick. Now, for a long time I've been saying that the mental health problems we have in society are massive. In short, 1 in 5 of us at the moment, or probably last month, 1 in 5 of us is struggling with stress, anxiety and depression in any 1 week. Well, that's going to get worse. It is going to get worse. It's already worse. You can see it in the panic buying, and the anxiety is just palpable everywhere. So I wanted to cover what anxiety is about. And I wanted to emphasize, by the way, we're not helpless in all this. The problem we have with mental health is the way it's approached. The way it's dealt with is once we get stress, anxiety and depression, then we have to take action, and we go and see somebody, we get taught how to manage it, we medicate it, and that's just not the right way. If we understood how this worked, we'd be completely self-sufficient in terms of our mental health. So that's one of the things I want to start to cover in this video today. Because at the end of the day, this crisis is an opportunity for us to learn who we are, what we really want out of life, and how to live a good life. And it will be simple, by the way. We've got lost in the way we're living our lives. And this is a reset. This is an opportunity, a very harsh one, for us to stand back and have a look at our life. So what I want to do, just to start off with, I was going to originally focus on lots of very specific advice about what we should and shouldn't be doing. And actually there's loads of advice come out over the last few days particularly. So I just wanted to focus initially on a few very important sort of actions on how we live our life before I tackle the things I really want to get onto. So the first thing is, this is anxiety principally that we're dealing with. So my suggestion, humble suggestion to you, is to look for advice or the news once a day and make it the same source. So it's the newspaper in the morning or it's BBC. Check in once a day with what's going on, and that's it. The constant need to update ourselves with what's happening only feeds into the anxiety, and I think we've all realised that the media thrive on anxiety. So minimise your exposure to the media. Next, talk to the people around you. If you're struggling, share it, talk. It's okay to be anxious. In fact, pretty much everybody's got anxiety going on at the moment. In fact, they should have, as you'll see in a bit. So talk to people, talk to your family, talk to your mates. The next thing is, most of us function best with routines. So we're all going to have to find new routines. So find some routines. Do the same things every day at the same time, or as near as you can. The next thing is fairly obvious, but is looking after our physical health. So looking after, getting some exercise in. Even if it's just going for a walk around the park or a walk around the fields. Also focusing actually on good quality food, fresh food particularly. One of the things that's happened is all these sort of packaged goods, they're the goods that have been swiped off the shelves. unless I've misread the situation, fresh food should keep coming in. So look after the quality of our diet. And the last thing I want to say is we're not alone in this. There are support groups popping up everywhere. I've just signed up as a volunteer for the Essex coronavirus support group. But my little village has got a support group. They're popping up everywhere. So make sure you're aware that they're there. Take advantage of them if you need to. But I would also implore you to volunteer to help, because this crisis that we're in is about getting together. It's only by getting together that we're going to get through this most easily. But I'm going to come back to that. Okay, so those are the specific pieces of advice. Minimal news intake. Talk to somebody if you're struggling. Develop some routines. Look after your physical health as well as your mental health. And, get active on the support groups. Now, anxiety. The problem we have, and I've said this numerous times, is that stress, anxiety and depression are not mental illnesses. Stress, anxiety and depression are not mental illnesses, but the problem is that's how they're seen by society and, to be honest, even by the medical profession. It's only when we've got them that we then go and do something about it, and that will mean managing stress, anxiety and depression or medicating it. Well, good luck with that, because at the end of the day, stress, anxiety and depression are not manageable, and I don't believe they're medicatable either. I'm not knocking antidepressants, by the way. They are a temporary elastoplast to settle everything down while we take action. And that's the critical point here. Stress, anxiety and depression are signals from our system. And they're saying, oi, mate, your life's not working. Stand back, have a look and change something. But we don't do that. We don't take action, we don't change anything, and then what happens is the stress and the anxiety particularly get worse. They go into a spiral, and admittedly that's when they become a mental health problem. But when we understand how this works, that does not have to happen. So in this current climate, yes, potentially our life is in danger. It is, and that's why this is being taken seriously. And anxiety, therefore, that we're feeling is correct. We are supposed to get anxiety. It's telling us to pay attention, change what we're doing, take action and do something. So what we have to do is follow all of the guidelines. Washing hands, all those things, minimising, face-to-face contact, but not completely. Being careful how we do it, maintaining the space. Yes, do all of that. That is what anxiety is telling us. And that's it. It's completed its function at that point because we've taken action. But the problem is we then go into worries about lots of other things, about being lonely, about our relationships failing, about financial worries. All of these things, yes, they're anxiety making, but they're not life-threatening. And at the end of the day, we will come through this. It's what human beings do. We will come through this. I'm going to come back to that later. So a lot of what we've got going on in terms of anxiety is actually not life-threatening. With the bit that is life-threatening, then, and albeit that the numbers, by the way, are still pretty small, a percentage of the population, there are those that are at higher risk, but for the vast majority of us, yes, we're in danger, but it's not guaranteed that we're going to die. And therefore the anxiety has to be proportionate. So, take action. Your anxiety is telling you to take action. Change the way you conduct your relationships, outside, one-to-one. Wash the hands. Do all that. We know all that. And then, as best you can, let the anxiety go, because it is not helping you. In many ways, we've got to surrender to this situation. There's nothing really that we can do about it. We've just got to be sensible and let it take its course. So we've just got to surrender, as I say, and that means when we can do that, we can let go of the anxiety. That's not to say it won't surface every now and again, but then it's probably telling us to do something. So I hope that makes sense, and yes, it probably sounds a lot easier than it is, but That's what the anxiety is there for. Then, moving onwards, getting through this and minimizing our anxiety is all about the people around us. I want to cover first the family and then wider society. At the end of the day, being realistic, we have this idyllic view of Christmas that we're supposed to have, that you see in all the ads, all these wonderful family gatherings, and a lot of us know that isn't true. In fact, the highest rate of divorce applications is a couple of weeks after Christmas. So we're about to go into a 3-month Christmas break, or thereabouts. Therefore, we need to pay attention as to how we conduct our relationships. Because what we don't want is, families falling apart whilst they're isolated. We've got to stand back and we've got to seriously rethink and be much more conscious about how we're conducting our relationships. And the key piece of advice here is very, very, very simple. And that is, particularly with your family, be open. Talk. If you're struggling, talk, share it. It is okay to be anxious. It is okay to be angry. These are human emotions. We're supposed to feel them. We're not supposed to shut them down. And the best way to deal with them is to share them with others. Now, we are going to be with our family very closely for the next 3, possibly more months. So, what most of us do, unfortunately, particularly out in society, and most of us particularly with our jobs, we walk around protecting ourselves all the time. So when I was in the corporate world, I even worked this one out well before I started in this field. And what I used to do is make sure that when I left the house in the morning, I got my mask on so people couldn't see how crap and useless and worthless I was, because that's actually what I was thinking, or that's actually what I believed about myself. I got a suit of armour on because, the world's a dangerous place. Everybody's out for themselves. And by the way, the panic buying and so on, that is showing us, sorry to be judgmental, in many ways that's human beings at our worst. It's selfish and it's all self-orientated, and that's the way society has developed over the last 40 years. But I'm going to come back to that. And now I've got lost. Serves me right. Right, yes, suit of armour on. Metaphorical, obviously, because we need to protect ourselves, we need to keep ourselves safe. And then, what I was doing in the corporate world is I would have a hologram up in front of me of the human being that I wanted people to see. And actually, if we're honest with ourselves, most of us are doing that all of the time. Most of us, or a lot of us anyway, are doing that with our family. We're pretending to be more perfect than we really are. And that is particularly so with mates, with colleagues and so on. We are hiding. We're trying to keep ourselves safe. And actually that means that we're trying to be somebody else. We're trying to be this more perfect version of ourselves. Well, can you be happy being somebody else? No. So what we need to do, especially now, is take off the mask, take off the armour and collapse the hologram and just be ourselves, warts and all. And yes, right now that means being vulnerable. It means sharing our weaknesses. It means admitting that we're anxious, that we're worried about something, admitting that we're angry about something, admitting that we're lonely. It also means asking for help. And too many of us, men particularly, we've been brought up not to ask for help and to keep ourselves safe. So that's kind of my first, rather long-winded, request to you, is to just take off the armour, the mask and the hologram, especially with your family. It's going to be essential over the next 2 or 3 months. And just be you, warts and all. Right, next thing is, one of the things that's happened with families is, the most obvious example is how we eat dinner. And I know we've done this as a family to some degree. When I was a kid, we would eat family at the dining room table. So in other words, or the kitchen table, we ate together. That happens very rarely for most families now. Either we're eating on a tray in front of the telly, perhaps the kids are upstairs on the computer eating their supper up there, this is a brilliant opportunity to sit down and talk to each other. So I would say to you, I'd really recommend doing that every single evening. Sit down, make it family time, and you'd be amazed how much easier it is to share things when we do that. It's essential to have that open communication with our family, to have dinner together. And the other thing which I touched on earlier is routines. Families need routines, and by the way, especially kids need routines. So find a routine. Just make sure that we're doing the same things in terms of self-care every day, and if you can, make sure it's the same time of day. But the ultimate message: your family is your team. It's your close team. And teams, other than in sport, seem to have been neglected for years. That team spirit, that's what a family should be. It should have that team spirit. All in this together, and we are all in this together. So please try and rethink how you conduct the family relationships quickly. Talk it through with the family, be open, and especially with the kids. And the kids, at the end of the day, they need to know they're safe. They need to know they're loved. Whatever happens, they're safe and they're loved. And we need to empower them to some degree, but maybe that's another topic for another day. And by the way, I am going to start releasing regular videos, so yeah, on different topics. Right, so that's the family. And the last section I want to really talk about is society. And this is going to come across as unapologetically spiritual. And really we're talking, I guess, about the wartime mentality here. Now, you talk to your grandparents, your great-grandparents, the people that were alive in the war, and they will tell you how everybody got together. We're all in this together, and that is something that hasn't been there probably since the Second World War. Pitching in, helping each other, being there for others. The way that society has developed, especially from the 80s onwards, and I always put my hand up and say, yes, I was a yuppie. One of those people that was only interested in making money, wearing the Christian Dior suits and all the rest of it. And that is where society's gone. It's gone off in a very materialistic view of what life's about. So there are so many things now that we see as absolutely essential, we have to have and we spend our money on, and actually they're not. I'm not going to get all lectury about that for now, but what has happened is we've become very isolated, very self-orientated. It's all about keeping ourselves and our families normally, looked after, safe and so on. And it's changed the structure of society dramatically. We don't have the community. The sense of communities has just dropped through the floor. And actually this comes back to something very, very basic in terms of humanity. And interestingly, I did a talk recently in Saffron Walden Town Hall, and one of the questions I got asked came out, as far as I was concerned, came out the blue. But it was a really, really important question. And I was talking about stress, anxiety and depression and how we actually deal with them, how we're actually internally ourselves equipped to deal with them, not manage them, deal with them. And I was talking a little bit about society, and this gentleman in the second row said, well, yeah, but this is all about competition. Human beings, the way we live life, it's all about being competitive. No, it's not. It isn't. There are two things here. And I may quote this wrong, by the way, but we tend to think of Darwin's law as being survival of the fittest. And to some degree, that is how we've been living our life for the last 40 odd years. That's why we've become more selfish, frankly. We've been more worried about ourselves than other people. And that's not what he said. The reason human beings succeed and grow is because we adapt. We adapt. And A, that, and B, we cooperate. So this is actually about competition versus cooperation. Yes, there is competition in life, that's life, but it doesn't have to govern the way we live our life. There's cooperation, and actually that should govern how we live our life. And behind that, this actually acts in our body, most of us completely unknowingly. Cooperation we get rewarded for. So one of the hormones you may have come across, or you may not, is oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that mums get flooded with as they give birth to create a close and immediate bond with the baby. So oxytocin is absolutely about connection. Now, when we do something good, altruistic if you like, which is a word a lot of people laugh at, but when we do something, we look after somebody, we do a good deed, we actually get a rush of oxytocin. That is a reward for doing something good. Now that seems to have, to a large degree, disappeared out of society. So moving forwards, we are going to be forced in this situation to cooperate. We've got to. And therefore we need to re-look at how we conduct our relationships, and we need to recognise and actually feel when we do something good and we help somebody, we get this rush of oxytocin, we get the reward. So this is about cooperation, not competition. And the final thing I want to talk about is values. Values are what's important to us in our life. And the value that most people talk about is honesty. Yep, fair enough, it's really, really important and missing in quite a lot of areas. But I would like to suggest to you 3 values for moving forwards in how we conduct our own lives, and actually how we rebuild communities, and how we start to look at living, how we live life as human beings. And those values are empathy, engagement, and empowerment. So empathy is being there for people, supporting people. It is cooperating. Engagement is not sitting in the background. Engagement is taking action. And as I say, normally if you combine the empathy and the engagement, that is actually taking action to be with people, to help people. That means most of us have got to refocus how we see life. So empathy, engagement, and finally empowerment. This is my big thing in a way, is empowerment, self-empowerment. Because at the end of the day, we're in charge of our lives. The one person we can't get away from is ourselves. And if in the background we don't like who we are at some level, that completely colours the way we see the world. It colours the way we create our reality. So just to finish off, the way we need to look at mental health is, or deal with it, is actually through mental wellness education. Is actually teaching people how this works, how we create our reality, and the tools, if you like, are self-awareness, actually understanding who we are. And by the way, 91% of our mind is unconscious. So 91% of how we create our reality on a second-by-second basis is unconscious. How much do we know about our unconscious? That's why the mental wellness education is so important, because we need to understand the programs that we're running in the background. So self-awareness, self-esteem is actually being comfortable with who we are, warts and all. And at the end of the day, we've got to stop worrying about what other people think about us. As parents, we've got to stop bringing our kids up to worry about what other people think about us, because how many people in your life actually matter? Serious question. Just think, come up with a number. And for most people, it's somewhere between 5 and 8, probably. People that actually in their lives really matter. Everybody else doesn't really matter. And yet we worry about what everybody thinks about us. We create this anxiety all the time. We hide who we are. So self-esteem is just being comfortable with who we are, warts and all. We're not perfect. We mess up, we make mistakes, we hurt people, we do things we shouldn't do, we lie. You know, those are all human foibles, if you like. But at the end of the day, why shouldn't you like yourself? That's another question for you to think about, by the way. Why? Give me one good reason why you shouldn't be comfortable with who you are. I've been challenging people out for 10, 12 years. I've never actually had an answer from somebody that stands up. There is no reason why we shouldn't feel comfortable with who we are. And when we are comfortable with who we are, and we're not hiding, the anxiety, or social anxiety, or the anxiety we have about what people think just disappears. Life becomes so much easier. And at that point, we are self-empowered. One more thing in that, by the way, we need to know what we need, what we want out of life. We need to have a vision for our life. Most of us, I'm afraid, just get on a treadmill and off we go. But if you stand back and you understand who you are, you're comfortable with who you are, then working out what you want out of life is much, much easier. And by the way, that is what this virus is all about. It's a reset. It's getting us to refocus on what is important in our life. We've lost touch as a society. We've lost touch with what is important in life. We're going to be forced to live a simple life over the next 3+ months. We've got no option. So the other last request to you is actually, it's mindfulness at the end of the day, is be aware of what's going on. Be thankful for the little things. You know, being out in nature, I know all this sounds very spiritual, but it's so true. We've lost touch with all of that. And that, I believe, is what this virus is all about. It's a reset for humanity. It's a checking point for us to reset how we see ourselves and how we see our life. Last thing, I've said that a few times, I'm also putting up a library, and you'll see it on the website, of self-hypnosis sessions to help if you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with loneliness, worries about loneliness, financial issues, that sort of thing. There's a small library of 5 self-hypnosis sessions that you can download and listen to yourself at home. And then there are 5 guided meditations which are sort of much more upbeat, just imaginative, sort of creative ways of engaging your unconscious, actually. And those are about 10 minutes long. The hypnosis sessions are longer. And with the hypnosis, by the way, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. It's actually just being physically nice and relaxed. So the best thing to do is lie down on the sofa or your bed, listen to it with headphones on, and if your mind wants to wander off, just let it go. You do not have to hear every single word that's said to you. Most people's minds wander in and out, and that's fine. The state of hypnosis is just being physically nice and relaxed, and then the conscious, rational, logical mind that's normally anxious and analysing everything quietens down. And that means if your mind wants to wander off somewhere, just let it go, it's fine. And by the way, if you fall asleep, that is also fine. Anyway, we're in this together, guys. Let's just take the opportunity to be positive, to get involved with people and reset how we live our lives.